Okay, Brian, I think we're live. Buddy. How are you doing this morning?
Good. How are you?
I am hanging in there. I'm home with the kiddos and probably not doing the work that I'm actually paid to do, but alas, I'm home. So cheers. Good to see you.
A little downtime, a little leisure time.
Do you pronounce it leisure? Well, obviously you just pronounced it leisure, but why leisure over leisure?
I don't know if you want this whole story. Did you ever see that one of the last Chris Farley movies he made with Matthew Perry?
Yes, I do. I do recall that.
Where the guys like they're trying to beat Lewis and Clark to the Pacific Ocean or whatever, and he's
okay.
These band of hooligans, including Chris Farley, and they're telling him, "Oh, morale's down really bad, so you need to get to know the guys." And so he sits around a campfire and he's like, "What do you do with your leisure time?" Leisure time. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Time to yourselves. I don't know. I love that movie.
I have never seen that movie, but I've heard that it is. I know which one you're talking about, but I've never seen it.
It has a cult following, but actually the only other person I know who likes it is my sister. We may be the only two.
Okay.
Ever. There's a part where Charlie's got like a noose around his neck and he's about to be executed, and they're listing off his crimes, and he's just like giggling about them.
Hey, I need you to do me a favor, Brian. I'm not ignoring you, but our Instagram broadcast is working. So can you get on Instagram and join me there? Because we already have
the 21st century.
I am. I'm vaguely trying to pull you into the 21st century, and so you'll have to find our sports.
Like I'm an older person.
Hey, it's okay. You're a little bit more advanced than I am on a lot of things. I just happen to have you beat here on technology.
Then disappearing. What am I supposed to do here?
You're supposed to find the sports nerds, and then if you can just join live. Join the live.
You better talk for a minute. Oh, I see us. Oh,
okay.
Yeah, it says live. I can see you.
Okay, now click. Okay, now you click it.
Click what?
You should be able to join it. This is wonderful.
Oh,
there we go. I'm gonna go live. There you go.
Sports Nerds live video.
I got you. I already sent it to you.
Enable camera access. Do you want me to enable microphone access?
Yeah, both, please. And we're going to restart our recording since people are probably really entertained by this. If they're watching on Facebook,
that story,
you're going to have to retell your story about what was the name of the movie again? Hey, there he is.
I'm trying to kill the sound on this.
Oh, I should probably turn mine down too. There we go. Okay. Hey, we both have good video apparently. Okay. Let's start all over. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, hey, Brian Schrader, look at us.
Hello.
Cheers.
Instagram.
Hey, listeners, if you're listening via podcast, just want to let you know that Brian and I are live streaming on this recording on Instagram as well as on Facebook. The video is going to be available on Facebook when we're done too, so make sure you check that out. You get to see what we actually look like. Brian looks put together in his office. He looks like a professional. I'm wearing a shirt covered in paint with like in a basement dungeon. So things are going well here for both of us. We're succeeding.
Before anyone says it, I'll say it. Yes, I know it's the same shirt I wore in the last video. It was an accident.
I wonder if people actually paid that much attention. Do you like the wonderful, I feel like a meteorologist here, right? I've got some pillows that are blocking the basement window. So there's no sunlight. Okay, fantastic.
Oh, is that what that is? I thought it was like a lampshade.
No, that's a pillow. So I can just wave to people. Hey, Brian. Hey, Richard. Hey, everybody. How we doing? All right, there's Curtis. Okay, so before we jump into our sports-related conversation, you were telling me a wonderful story about I believe it was a Matthew Perry movie with Chris Farley. You want to go ahead and start there?
Yeah. Matthew Perry. I'm trying to look at it. Almost
Heroes. That's correct.
Is it Heroes?
I believe.
Matthew Perry and Chris Farley were in this movie called Almost Heroes, which is like he was an explorer who wanted to beat Lewis and Clark to the Pacific Ocean, but they were bumbling idiots. So it was like the untold story of these idiots who were not as good as Lewis and Clark. It was funny. I don't know. There's a part where I think I already said this, but where Chris Farley is like, He's about to be executed, and he's got a noose around his neck, and they're reading off his crimes. He's just giggling about it. Like, this is a really funny part in the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie, where Johnny Depp's doing the same thing. Total ripoff. It happened in Almost Heroes first. It has an 8% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Is that bad?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's low. It's relatively low. I would say so. I mean, I don't know what if there was a Rotten Tomatoes for podcasts, I'm not sure where we'd fall in there, but yeah, I don't think 8% is very good.
I want to think of it that it's like a cult thing.
I would probably agree. I wonder what the Big Lebowski's on there. Can you see what the Big Lebowski is?
See what? It's
on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh,
we should probably have a conversation about sports.
Yeah, let's talk about sports.
I'm guessing people have been missing us. We're like a day late.
82 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay, so that's
I'll be right back. Keep talking.
So we are a day late posting this thing because Brian and I, as many of you know from watching our Facebook page, were in Minneapolis for a conference last weekend. If you're listening to the podcast, feel free to check out the video because we had a really good interview with a couple of the gents over at Orange and Blue 760 and talked about the future of the NFL. So that was actually a really fun conversation, and those two were very, very good interviewers. So definitely check that out if you can. We also posted that in podcast format last week. This is Brian. Are you back? Are you there? There you there. You're upside down. Okay. You're upside down. There we are. The freedom of not having to do a radio show is just fantastic.
Yeah, this would not fly on the radio.
No, I mean I'm not wearing pants right now, and my kids are probably upstairs fighting. I could never do this on radio. The expectations are just too high.
It all happened on the radio. We just sort of tried to cover it up. There was a facade.
I think we did a decent job of it too. I just realized for our Facebook live stream, I have not been staring at the camera. So
there's too many screens.
Yeah, way too many screens. Let's talk about some things today. It's World Cup week. The World Cup starts on Thursday. The U.S. Open starts on Thursday. And we'll get to those stories, obviously, in a little bit, because I think you and I both have some sports opinions to drop in regards to both of those topics. But the first thing I guess we should discuss, I guess we need to plug our social. So everybody, if you're not following us already, make sure you find us on Twitter. We're @_sportsnerds. We're on Instagram. For many of you are actually following us there, @sports.nerds. Facebook, fe.me/sportsnerds. Quick shout out to our title sponsor, Highway Brewing Company. Lost Highway. I was just in there the other day. They make some fantastic beer. Good people. I've been to a lot of breweries in town. A lot of breweries kind of country. That sounded like a brag. That was not a brag. That's.
Oh, you like beer? Congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. I can't say that. I know. So I know. What I was going to say before you rudely interrupted me was that I really just like going in there. I like the owners. They're good people. Bartenders are always good people, and it's got a different kind of vibe. It's not a hipster brewery type vibe. It's just a good place to kind of hang out, and good lighting in there, good TVs. So if you're down in the Denver Tech Center or you want to find their beer around town, I suggest you have a good drink. I like the Mountain Coast IPA. That's my go-to. When are you going to get Bell's on board for us, by the way?
Never, probably. I'm going to be near there in a couple weeks, and I'll check it out.
Doing what?
I'm just like going up to a little lake house, drinking some beer.
Nice.
Oh, no, that's not true. What a Shorts. Never mind. Bell's is awesome, though. Bell's, you should definitely be our sponsor.
I bet they'd do it. Actually, they would never do it. Hey, if anybody wants to be our sponsor, you know what we're doing? You do?
Yeah, I know a guy who knows a guy.
Okay. We have a unique relationship with Lost Highway, but I mean, if people want to sponsor the show, it's literally no risk for you to sponsor the show. I mean, we will give you shout outs. Brian and I just kind of want to take advantage of your social media presence because that's how we get listeners. That's how we spread the word. And until we're getting like 15,000 downloads a week, that's what we'll end up doing. But we're a long way from that. So if you want to sponsor this show, if you have people who think would like your product, whether you are in Iowa, we have a lot of listeners in Iowa, we have a lot of listeners in Michigan, and then of course here in Colorado, but hopefully eventually right across the country. reach out to us at wearesportsnerds@gmail.com, and we'd love to work with you. But that's enough of that. Enough of the boring stuff. Let's jump into it. Buster Olney wrote a piece last week for ESPN.com. There was also an interview, I believe, that he did with Outside the Lines, talking about basically all the ways that advanced statistics have changed baseball. The title of it was "Parts of Baseball Are Disappearing Before Our Very Eyes." And Brian and I were drawn to this article because it's very much in line with some of the research that we are doing and hopefully about to submit regarding, how advanced analytics have changed, basically how players view themselves, how ownership views players, and then the relationship between all of these variables. But Brian, do you want to kind of summarize Olney's argument or his piece at all? I don't know that it was necessarily an argument; it was more or less an observation. But to me, I think I found it interesting because now we have a relatively accessible piece about how sabermetrics and then evolutions of advanced analytics have changed the game to a point now where if you actually go to the game or watch the game on TV, you can begin to see how numbers and I guess economic theory in a lot of ways have changed baseball.
I mean, the bulk of what we get from Olney's piece is sort of like this. Here's trends in baseball toward specific types of plays and away from specific types of plays. And he sort of, I think, points to the rise of analytics as an explanation for those things. So he says that there's far less bunting than there used to be. There's far less pitch out. So pitch out is where you intentionally throw a ball that's easier for the catcher to then throw down to second if you anticipate a steal or something like that. One that the hitter can probably not put a swing on, or even if they do, can't make contact with, or would hard for them to make contact with, or that's just outside, so the catcher can just kind of stand up and already be in a throwing motion. And he sort of says that kind of tracks the numbers over the last decade in a lot of these cases, and says we're seeing meaningful, substantial changes in the way the game is played, and that the reason for that, the underlying explanation, is the rise in analytics, saying that those plays are not as valuable as we once thought they were. That we used to, we as baseball used to ascribe much more value to the bunt, right? That there were automatic, no matter who you are, should bunt in these situations in baseball. There were automatic situations where, for example, if you had someone who was very much likely to steal a base, you would call a pitch out, right? You would steal bases more often. It's another category that talks about that stealing attempts and overall steals are all down. And the reason for this is because, like we mentioned, analytics are suggesting that those plays are more risky than meaning that the reward that you might get from them is overpowered by the risk of trying those plays. He makes kind of a secondary argument too, if we want to call it an argument, which is that this has limited the role of managers in baseball, that they have less to do, that they used to make decisions. Should I steal here? Is this a stealing situation? Should I call for a bunt here? Should I call for a pitch out, etc.? And now that they don't have to make a lot of those decisions, I would kind of point out that managers are making way more pitching moves than they used to. I don't have the data to back it up, but this is a result of fewer bench players being position players and more of them being pitchers, and we're more likely to pitch in to bring in different pitchers in situations that we didn't used to. So while there might be a decrease in managerial decision making on some points, I think there's an increase in other ones. So I don't think he's suggesting we should get rid of managers or whatever, but definitely seems to prove that the analytics are having a meaningful effect on this game. My question to you is, and we sort of interacted a little bit with Buster on Twitter about this article, so I'm not criticizing it either way, but I certainly don't want to, since he was nice enough to engage with us a little bit. But do you think that he's upset about this, or is it, like you said, he's just describing the current status of baseball? Because I think a lot of people might see this and be sad and be upset, like, oh, it's a bummer we don't bunt as much anymore. And I'll be honest, I read this article and I'm like, yeah, good. Like, this means baseball's better, right? If we're not engaging in high risk plays with little reward, that's good. That's a good thing.
No. Yeah, I didn't feel like he was being negative about at least his reading of what's going on. I felt it was just more of an observation of kind of how things have changed. I think it was it was a unique piece in the sense that the way that he's talking about baseball, necessarily the way that kind of lay consumers of sports discourse are used to reading or understanding things, because he focused a lot on risk management. I guess, did I answer your question enough?
Yeah.
Did I answer that? Like, I don't think he's down on advanced analytics whatsoever. And I also don't think
what people would be when they read this. I do.
Yeah, I guess you could probably read it and interpret it that way, for sure. I wonder. Hold on one second. I guess it's not that managers are making fewer decisions. I think it's not so much that people are managing less, but rather that managers don't have to kind of make that gut decision in terms of changing pitchers or putting in a pinch hitter. They're able to actually look at data that's going to support them one way or the other and just go with how the numbers look. And I think that is different, right? That isn't necessarily critical thinking or problem solving, those kind of thoughtful evaluative skills per se. But they'll just call up some dude in the dugout, some assistant manager, some assistant coach, and get some sort of information on the hitter that's coming up, and then they will act accordingly based on who's in their bullpen. And so I think that's his argument in terms of how it's changed how managers act. It's not that managers aren't there and necessary per se, but rather that the information or that the decision-making process has just changed, and it's more based entirely on analytics as opposed to, in kind of scare quotes, gut feelings. And so that's that. I guess I understand how, if you are a kind of traditional baseball fan or old school baseball fan, that might be somewhat off-putting, and people may not appreciate that, because you want the manager who's engaged, you want the manager who's making these kind of these gut decisions and throwing guys in there in situations that seem really inventive and wise. But to me, I'm okay with it, because it's more fun to look scientifically at the game, and so I appreciate the changes to this. I know that you're not asking for my own evaluation, but that's my response to your question.
No, I struggle with this, right? Because I think some people would say, oh, the game's, more boring, or it doesn't look the same, or that it's, too offense centric, or any number of those things I can imagine sort of folk swaying. But like things he's not pointing out as much here is that you're seeing, more offensive production because of things like, StatCast and exit velocity and exit angle and that sort of stuff, that hitters are becoming, for scientific reasons, for based on technology, better hitters in a lot of ways. You brought this up before in terms of golf, right? That golf, while it used to be a lot more of a feel game, now every element of a person's swing, their contact speed, their spin rate, all of that stuff is being diagnosed by a computer, which means they can figure out what their ideal swing path is and all of that nonsense, and then repeat it, right? The result of that is longer hitters, and the same is true in baseball, right? For more offensive production. I don't think people care about that. Right? I don't think that they're complaining for, I wish we had the good old days of fewer home runs or something like that. So it would be weird to me to complain about this. All of that being said, I do hate replay, and I wish managers still came out and argued with umpires. So I guess I kind of get it.
Yeah, it does kind of take away the arguing with the umpire thing. Like, what are you arguing? You can't argue balls and strikes.
Yeah, this is like the debate about whether there should be fighting in hockey, right? It adds nothing to the game, but at the same time, it's very much part of hockey.
Yeah, agree, 100%. Hey, can you do me a favor, and can you get back on Instagram? I kicked you out of the conversation just because your video was kind of bad. So there you go. Okay, I'm going to do that. Hey, can we have a quick conversation about the risk management component of this article? Because I think that's, to me, the big takeaway that's applicable to our listeners who may not be economics students or critical theory people. Because I guess I found what Olney was saying really not insightful, but different, because he was very obvious and clear about critiquing or assessing the fact that risk management is now this evaluative tool that has found itself within baseball. So, and the level of that kind of assessment, the amount by which people use risk management to make decisions is a completely novel concept. And so while managers for decades and decades and decades have, thought about risk and evaluated it, now we have these kind of tools that really allow for the fine tuning of that evaluation. And that shift is, primarily what is called a neoliberal economic shift, in the sense that as an economic theory, Milton Friedman, Friedrich Hayek, in the early, the 1930s, 40s, kind of post-war America and Western Europe, had created this theory that was basically a response to Keynesian interventionist economic policy that basically said, let's put the responsibility on individuals to manage risk, to make good choices, as opposed to having the state, or in our case here in the United States, the government kind of bailing them out from those decisions. And so what happens, and I think some of the stuff that Brian and I have really worked on in our careers, is how does an economic policy that is first taken up by a government, a corporation, a state, how does that trickle down into changing the way that individuals on a day-to-day basis live their lives, govern themselves, all of this. And so in this particular situation with the Buster Olney piece, we have an example of how an economic theory that was going to be used for kind of, eco-political reasons find its way into something that is not supposed to be necessarily political or governmental, that is baseball. And so this is how a theory, right, can actually become practiced at the very, very minute level. And baseball is, I suppose, just kind of a microcosm in this example that Buster Olney is bringing up of how this stuff happens in our day-to-day lives. So I guess to me, right, that when you and I were talking last week, that's why this article was unique. It's because it's bringing this argument to the kind of mainstream, and people are reading it and they're talking about it. It's in ESPN and all of this. And so that's what Buster Olney had responded to us when we had said, this is exactly what he's saying. We're basically seeing an example of how neoliberal economic policy has found its way into this kind of sphere that has nothing to do necessarily on the surface with economics. And he's just said 100%. Yeah, correct. You guys are right. So it's unique in the sense that he's recognizing it. It's not unique in the sense that it's not new. It's just that, again, that's that kind of practice of problematization that you and I do, right? Is pointing out these things that are not obvious. So I guess a cool article. Hopefully people learn some stuff from it. I do recommend, go find it, go check it out. Again, it's called, let me pull it up. One sec. Parts.
You can't. Oh, that's the wrong one.
Yeah. Parts of baseball are disappearing before our very eyes. So check it out. Do you have any other comments you want to make?
No, everything you're saying is totally correct, right? And the real practical way to see that the changes that he's describing will influence people's, particularly people who want to, play professional baseball or manage at the professional level, will change themselves. Is you're going to see this sort of as a positive feedback loop or negative feedback loop, depending on how you think about it. But where players who are coming up are going to realize that they don't have to spend as much time in the cage learning to drop down bunts, and they don't have to make sure that they've got a lot of speed, particularly speed that's good for stealing bases. Instead, what they have to prove is that they get on base a lot or that they don't strike out a lot. Managers similarly are not going to get jobs by if they go into an interview with the GM and spouting off about the value of the pitch out or the value of what situations you would steal a base, because I think managers understand the economic realities of winning baseball games and of building winning franchises. So instead, they're going to want managers who come in and are kind of the Cubs manager whose name is escaping me right now, the dude from Tampa Bay, Joe Madden, the Joe Maddens of the world, who are willing to come in and say, hey, listen, I don't know exactly what baseball is going to look like in a few years, but I know that the type of manager that is going to be successful is one who's open to changes in baseball that are being explained to us, at least in some part through analytics, right? That's how managers are going to get jobs. So it will change. It will change the people, how people try and break into professional baseball and certainly other professional sports too.
Yeah, good close there. Let's I suppose, segue to our next story. I thought let's save the World Cup conversation for our last segment. I thought let's briefly talk about the ratings that the Warriors-Cavs finals got. There was an article, Awful Announcing, kind of broke down the ratings. In some, they were awful. Let's see. Before the never before has. I want to make sure I get these statistics right. Friday night's Game 4 earned 16.2 million viewers, which was the least watched game of any of the 22 games played throughout the Warriors-Cavs finals series. The previous low was 16.5 million for Game 3 in 2016. To put those numbers in perspective, Game 7 in the 2016 finals drew almost the audience with approximately 31 million viewers. I mean, obviously, you
can't see me shaking my head.
Tell me, what's when you see that data?
Game 7s get better viewership numbers than Game 4s. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah,
no shit.
That's so obvious.
If this series went to Game 7, it would have had 31 million viewers as well, maybe more.
But I guess we don't necessarily have to. We don't have to necessarily evaluate this data. I want to ask you: is basketball getting more boring?
Or
do you like this? Do you like the Warriors style of play?
I mean, I think I might make a contradiction. I might contradict what I said before, which is, if it wins, you should be down with it. But no, I do think it looks worse. I mean, I think, in particular, the ISO plays. When it's just LeBron with the ball on one side and everybody else gets on the other side, and he can drive. And if a bunch of people come over, so they're doubling or tripling him down in the paint, and he kicks the ball. Yeah, I don't think that's the most beautiful basketball I've ever seen in my entire life. I think while it's fun to watch people make a bunch of 3-pointers, the ebbs and flow of that mean that sometimes you watch like Houston miss 37 3-pointers in a row, or James Harden miss 18 in a row across a 3-game span or something like that. So you got to take the good with the bad. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's at least a little bit of a part of me that misses more system offenses and more complex pick and rolls and some of that stuff. But at the same time, I don't agree with kind of this article that says that that's why that we have low ratings, or that people are over the Cavs Golden State kind of saga. I'll be honest, man. I think we're gonna remember this as a great time to be basketball fans. There's crazy top level talent. Parity is, there's definitely arguments to be made for parity, but I've enjoyed watching Golden State for the past 4, 5, 6, 7 years. I've enjoyed watching LeBron on all of the teams that he has been on / will be on, and I enjoyed this finals. I mean, that being said, this was not the most interesting finals. It was one close game and 3 games that weren't close at all. I mean, that happens. That happens sometimes. Listen, was the Toronto Cavs series interesting when they beat them in 4? No, it wasn't really compelling basketball. It wasn't super dramatic. But that doesn't mean that for me personally, I think this is, when the good Lakers teams, good Celtics teams back in the day, good Bulls teams. I like watching these big dynasties.
See, I think I miss the physicality of the game. I miss the Bulls teams, those Pistons teams, even the Lakers. When Shaq and Kobe were playing, there was a physicality to them. There really isn't. People complain incessantly about the refereeing, the officiating, for the last few years they have with these games. And I mean, they say LeBron's too physical, all of this, yada, yada, yada. I'm not defending LeBron. I just think it's not like it used to be more fun to be able to get a guy the ball inside and watch him work, or to watch a dude drive to the hoop like Jordan or even LeBron does now and just, command the lane. And now that is so rare, unless it is LeBron, I guess, and Steph Curry kind of cuts through there. But I just imagine Steph Curry trying to do that to a Pistons team in 1988, and somebody just destroys him and doesn't get called for a foul. And I'm not saying that kind of game is better than this kind of game. I'm just saying that I miss watching the physicality of it. And I think I don't want to come across in this kind of overtly masculine way. It's just, I don't know. I don't like the statistic-driven basketball game as much. It doesn't do it for me. I miss having a big center and playing that kind of offense where you try to get that guy the ball. It's not appealing to me anymore. I don't
want to defend Golden State, but I guess I will a little bit, which is I think that they play matchup basketball better than most other teams. I mean, they didn't play JaVale McGee in the Western Conference Finals because the Rockets didn't play a big man. He played 3 minutes in that entire series. He played big minutes in every game because the Cavs were playing Tristan Thompson in the finals. I mean, I think they match up well. And one other thing that I would caution against too is sort of looking at how a style of play looks in the moment as opposed to the context that sort of brought it about. I remember very well the sort of Golden State Warriors team coming onto the scene and beating, my Denver Nuggets as a 2 seed when they were a 7 seed. And the way they did it was they set these really high pick and rolls, and every single time Ty Lawson would stay under that pick instead of going over the top, and Klay Thompson and Steph Curry were hitting monster threes from back there. And then as soon as we started going over those picks, they would roll and they would pass it down low to that forced people to come out over the top a little bit more, and they respond situationally. It's not like that was the only playbook they had.
There's my child. Hold on 1 second. Go upstairs, please. What happened? I'm going to have to write this down to cut this out. 30 minutes.
Still on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, I know. That'll definitely be there. Okay, buddy, head upstairs. I'll make you some lunch. Head upstairs. Okay, I don't have no idea what's going on or why we're fighting. Okay, so
you want to be on the podcast?
So I guess your connection to the Warriors team is obviously different than mine. Then do you have an affinity for them because you saw them early on in their kind of rise to dominance?
Okay. They can't possibly keep shooting like this, but they kept shooting like this. I mean, it was
they did.
It was absolutely
head upstairs and I'll make some lunch. You can go have some licorice, okay? Upstairs and have licorice. Honey, please.
My Legos are so tiny.
I'll fix it when I get upstairs, okay? Hey, everybody. There we go. Okay, we're back. We are back. Do you have any closing remarks on the NBA Finals? Because we're not going to have to watch basketball for a while.
I don't care where LeBron goes. He should stay. Yeah. He should stay in Cleveland. And I should tell my LeBron joke.
What's your LeBron joke?
Will LeBron supporters make about why he didn't win all those finals? Not 1,
not
2, not 3.
Oh, he made it.
Not 4, not 5. Been sitting on that one forever. And it's
you've been thinking about that joke for a while. You said last week when we were in Minneapolis, you said you wanted to bring it up.
Well, I had a broken hand the whole time. Shut up.
You got it, buddy. You were able to drop your joke, so good job. Okay, let's talk about the topic of the week, which would be the World Cup. So, why don't you go ahead? One of my other children, I only have 2 kids. What? Yeah, you can have licorice.
Breaking news. Sam may or may not have more
okay.
kids, and licorice is okay for lunch. Catherine, if you're listening.
Yeah, she will definitely tune in and watch that. Okay, so
I was just having this conversation with some colleagues at work about it.
First question
about the World Cup. Like, can you watch it without the USA?
I was going to say, first question. Do you care that the USA is not in it?
I mean, I'd rather they were in it.
I don't really.
I'm still going to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to watch it. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. How do we watch it? Do you know? I should probably learn this. How do I?
At like 4 a.m. and I mean, do we have somebody care? Who Fox has it? We did a piece on this where they weren't going to do very much live announcing, right?
That's correct. They're not going to do a lot of. Well, they're not going to do in-person announcing. Yeah, so they're going to do it live. But yeah, I'm trying to find the.
I think if Fox has it,
TV schedule. Yeah, it'll be on. Everything's going to be on. Showing broadcasters for Fox. Oh, Fox and Telemundo. So our first game will be at 9 a.m. Denver time on Thursday on Fox and Telemundo. And that's the only game on.
2 days from now?
Yeah, that's the only game on Thursday too.
I didn't know
is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surprise. Christmas comes early.
I know that's the only. It's Russia and Saudi Arabia. Those are the only games. Oh, then there's Spain and Portugal play at noon on Friday.
I will say this: the USA not being in it is like I didn't pay attention to like the group draws or any of that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, he just didn't care about that. So, we are interested in talking about the World Cup because we're running on our own World Cup pool. Hey, listeners, everybody, make sure you participate in our World Cup pool. You can go to Facebook and find the link and all that.
Only 2 days to sign up.
Only 2 days to sign up. We have a pretty good slew of folks to start with, so hopefully we get some more. But I guess I'm intrigued by the World Cup being in Russia, and that's why I thought, or that's the kind of frame I wanted to use to have a conversation about the World Cup today, because I sent you a few stories in preparation for this. Russia is going through and slaughtering stray dogs. Did you read that? Did you have a chance to read that?
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, so, obviously they're trying to clean up the streets in these cities that are hosting World Cup games, and part of the cleaning up involves capturing and killing stray dogs, which animal rights, humane societies are not very happy about it. But it's a good article.
Honest, around World Cup time, what I really don't want to see is stray dogs. So.
I know.
Yeah.
There we go. Dan Lair says I misspelled Olney. I did misspell it.
Olney?
I put a U instead of.
Oh, you did when you texted me too. I just assumed that was autocorrect.
Nope, I messed up. Maybe I did. Maybe it was. Correct. So, Russia's going to be under the microscope for this World Cup for glaring reasons. The number one would be things like homophobia, but also racism. And so there was an article that Brian and I read this morning from CBC. Russia has hired a former soccer star, Alexei Smirtin, who will, I suppose, kind of go around to the various stadiums, the 11 cities hosting the World Cup, and sit in the stands, see whether or not racism is happening. But you know this better than me. You've talked about this more than me. I mean, Russian fans have been very vocal in their just kind of bigoted rants, right, towards players of color who come into their stadiums and play.
Yeah, 2 years ago during the Euros, there was talk of booting the Russian soccer team out of the Euro Championship because there was just a bad run of Russian fans. A lot of it was just sort of hooliganism, starting fights. Antagonizing other fans, but definitely the racism that this article is about was a part of it. So this article that you sent talks about, just kind of the prevalence of racist chants, racist songs, racist signage, kind of antagonizing and taunting players, usually from other teams that are people of color, people from largely there's a large population of African players in European soccer, in the Bundesliga and in Russia. It's just a lot of racist behavior. And this is, I don't know how we should read this. Is this a genuine attempt to try and make sure that that there's not some really terrible headlines that come out of this World Cup about poor treatment of supporters, poor treatment of players. Or if this is just kind of an attempt to put a Band-Aid on something that they can't do anything about. The article that you sent talks about this. The guy whose job it is to try and make sure that racism doesn't sort of dominate the headlines is basically saying, we're going to try our best. There's no way we can stamp it out 100%. It's, kind of a culture of sort of, I don't even think he wants to call it racism, but he wants to call it sort of kind of, I don't know. I don't know what a good word for it would be. He sort of seems to chalk it up to just misunderstanding of how offensive is the stuff that they're doing. It's probably unfair to even characterize it as that. But he also kind of talks about the ways that when you try and implement rules to prevent racism in soccer, like, if we see you with racist signs, we're going to kick you out. And he's like, well, then they just start singing songs. Because if they do that, it's harder to pinpoint it and kick it. Like you can't take a picture of someone singing a racist song or something like that. Or they sing songs that are sort of polysemic where the racist undertones may not be clear to everybody. So yeah, I don't anticipate that this attempt is going to ensure sort of a incident-free Olympics from either racism, taunting of players, taunting of fans, or from fan violence. I assume that we'll see some of all that. Hopefully none of that.
Yeah, I think what's I guess to kind of back this up a little bit, this is not like a bunch of liberal snowflakes saying, oh, they're saying things that really aren't that, they're borderline offensive or not offensive at all. Like these people are chanting awful things to players, stuff that would never be acceptable here in the States. I'm not trying to put ourselves above Russia or anything like that, but I mean, it's really, really terrible. I mean, literally, if you were to do this at an NFL game, somebody would turn you in and you get thrown out. Like you can't do this. But I mean,
too, that it's not just Russia. I mean, like just even the Premier League, this happens all the time. You know, like in England, this happens, in Spain, and all the other European leagues, it happens as well. So it's not. I mean, it's easy to point at Russia, especially because of the stuff that happened at the Euros, but it happens all over. And I think that people tend to think about Europe as sort of more progressive when it comes to race stuff, but in a lot of ways, the sort of populism sweep that we saw in the United States in 2016, are still kind of in the middle of, is true in Europe as well. And you're right, it's not sort of benign racism either. It's like pretty terrible stuff that happens. And this article talks about, you know, there's a black player on the field, fans will, you know, taunt them by making monkey sounds, or they'll throw bananas at them and stuff like that. It's really gut-wrenching shit. It's quite terrible. So, and
it's the fact also that, you know, the establishment doesn't really do anything to stop this. I mean, this is the article, like you had said. You have the soccer player, this famous dude, who's going to come in and try to, I guess, be the minister of racism, or, you know, try to slow it down. But he gives himself so many outs, right? And he gives the Russian government so many outs to say, you know, we're going to try our best, but we can't do everything. I can't even imagine what that would look like here in the States, because I would like to believe that a sports organization would work very, very hard to kind of eliminate this. Ben Kilberg says, catch the E60 on the Russian street fighting. I guess we'll have to watch that speed. Okay. All right. We'll check that out, Benjamin. Thank you.
Yeah, there's been this thing in European club soccer, and I think it was in the last World Cup and maybe the last two World Cups, where the players will come out and they'll kind of the captains of each team will kind of co-read this pledge to not have racism. You know, it's like racism shouldn't be any part of the game. And so like they do try, and there has been an attempt to sort of make it front and center. The problem is, you know, like oftentimes it's stuff that happens on the field. Sometimes it's players saying racist stuff to other players. I mean, the one interesting thing that's worth pointing out is there was a pretty high profile, and I'm going to forget the name, of a European player who was charged with a crime for saying racist stuff to another player on the field before. So, I mean, maybe that's the direction that needs to go, is criminalizing that sort of stuff. That obviously brings up an entirely different debate about the degree to which we think free speech matters and what sort of stuff we should be allowed to say. But it's serious enough that, you know, criminal charges were brought against somebody for this. Maybe there were civil charges. Maybe.
Well, I guess we'll see how it plays out. You would think it might start on Thursday with this Russian-Saudi Arabia contest. But I think let's wrap it up for there today. No massive sports stories coming out this week. So next week, we'll see what happens. We'll be in the midst of the World Cup group phase. Brian and I, as always, you can find us on Facebook, fb.me/sportsnerds. We are on Instagram at sports.nerds, and then Twitter, _sportsnerds. Make sure that you check us out. We're throwing a lot of good content out there. If you are a golf fan, we're also running a U.S. Open pool, and that you can find a link to that on our Facebook page. We created an event as well as a few posts regarding what's going on there. You can also find information at Linktree. So it's linktr.ee/sports.nerds. So Linktree is the name of the hosting service, right, of the website. And then if you just sports.nerds is our profile page. And there are several links up there, one to the World Cup contest and one to the U.S. Open contest. We have some fantastic prizes from our title sponsor, Lost Highway Brewing Company. If you're down in the Denver Tech Center or anywhere where you can find Lost Highway beer, we definitely recommend you find it. And then Tivoli is back supporting us, and so Tivoli is going to throw some prizes to folks as well. We do have golf also for the U.S. Open pool. We have some golf in the Denver area, so make sure that if you are a Denverite, you sign up for our pool, pick your players, and try to get yourself some free golf. Brian, do you have any final comments you want to leave our audience with?
No, that's good.
No. All right, my friend. Well, fantastic job today, and we will talk later, all righty? See you, buddy. All right, there we go.
Dude,
Be a lot.
the Instagram drained my my
Stranger, did it?
It was at
I
like
haven't even-
65%, and then it was blinking me at 10. I had to get up and go get a plug.
Oh wow, shit! It took 30% off mine too. Wow.
Yeah, it just drained it. That was crazy.
All right, I'm gonna go upstairs and make sure my kids aren't bleeding everywhere.
They're just eating licorice. They're good.
All right, buddy. We'll talk later.
Catch you later.